All right, this is the bench shear, and it's different than the Beverly shear in that the Beverly shear, we made a video about this. It's for cutting sheet metal, okay? It says right on it, sheet metal only. So that's this type of material. You would not be able to use the bench shear to cut sheet metal because it's so thin. If I try to cut it, it's likely to just fold over. See, that just sort of started to cut, but just mangled it and bent it. This shear is for thicker material. So here's a piece of flat bar. It's 3 millimeters thick or 1/8 of an inch thick. And that's the type of material that we cut on this shear. Now, we can't cut this over here because that's sheet metal only. We can cut that here, okay? So this will cut this 3 millimeter flat bar. You could handle a flat bar that's wider than this, but I would not go much thicker than that because you just will not have the strength to cut through it, okay? It just takes too much force. That's hard on the students, and that's also hard on the equipment to cut anything thicker than that 3 millimeters. But it works on the same principle as a scissor. In this case, you want to put it as far back into the jaws as you can, and you simply pull back on it. Now, when I'm doing this, you come around here and take a look. As I start doing this, this piece wants to tip up. And if you allow that to tip up, it's just going to fold over. It's not going to cut. So we're going to hold this down. The other thing it wants to do is it wants to twist on us. As we start shearing, this wants to tip and twist. So I'm going to hold this in place, and I'm going to prevent it from tipping up, and I'm going to prevent it from twisting left and right. And I will just pull right through. Now, the further back you are, that made a cut for me. Okay, that cut just a little piece off of there. The further back into the jaws you are, the more mechanical advantage you have. So the easier it's going to be for you to cut. If you try cutting up here, it takes such an insane amount of force that most students won't be able to do it. Okay. All right, so that's how you cut flat bar on here. And you can also cut round bar. Now, if you take a round bar and you put it into the regular jaws and you try to cut that, you will wreck this machine because you will take a chip, a circular chip right out of the blade. It'll dent it or chip it. That's not the way to cut round bar. The only thing we're allowed to cut here is flat. There's a hole in the side here that can accept round bar. Now, it's not accepting it right now. You've got to get this handle into the right position, and there it is. It will accept the round bar, and it comes out the other side here. The problem with this is it's really hard to tell where your cut line is. This is really easy to line up your cut line on the jaws of this blade. This is going to cut on this surface here. So you got to put a line on your project. You got to sort of guess when it's lined up with this surface right here, and that's where the cutting is going to happen. So it's a bit of a blind cut, but I can cut through this. Now this is 3/8 of an inch. It is just under a centimeter. I think it's 8 millimeters. And this 8 millimeter thick bar is the maximum you're going to be able to cut on here. Okay. Anything bigger than this, and it requires extreme force, and you probably won't be able to do it. Plus, it's hard on the equipment. On the other side here, as I'm about to cut, this small round bar is going to be cut with a lot of force. And if I pull down and it cuts through, this has the potential to shoot out of here because of the explosive force, and it could hit somebody in the face or in the eye or something like that. So I'm going to place this fence here. This is a fence that lives here, and it's just for this machine. It can be clamped down onto this table with a clamp, and it acts as a fence. So I could put this up against here, make a cut, slide it up against here again, make another cut, and you could cut like 10 of these bars at the exact same distance. So that's what this fence is for, is if you want to have multiple pieces that are the same length, you just clamp this down in the right spot using a C-clamp, okay? So I don't need that in this instance for making multiple cuts. I need it to prevent this piece from shooting out. So I'll use it like a sort of a safety wall, and now I will make my cut, pulling down. It's a lot of force. There it is, okay? This is probably too thick for most students. There's the cut. It's sheared off there quite nicely. It does sort of squeeze and crush it a bit. It's not a perfect circle anymore. But it is a nice, fast way for you to make cuts on steel, aluminum. You can really kind of cut any kind of metal on here, and it makes for a quick cut. Okay? It's faster than using a hacksaw, but in our shop, we only have one of these. And if you all try to use it, you'll have a big lineup. If you use hacksaws, we have like 15 or 16 of them. So using a hacksaw takes longer, but at least there's a whole bunch of them. You don't have to wait in line, okay? So remember, this is just for flat bar and round bar. It's not for sheet metal. And remember to pick up any of your scraps when you're done. This little round piece has been left over, and if that was to fall on the ground, then that becomes like a little ball bearing, right? So if I was to have that on the floor here and not clean it up, somebody could step on that and see my foot's rolling, and you could slip and have a really bad fall. So always make sure that you pick up scraps at the table. If they're useful, then they go into the short ends rack in the bottom drawers for somebody to use for their projects. If they're not useful, then you can throw them into the recycling bin here and making sure you're cleaning up after yourself. And that's it.